Welcome to Capitol Preview, a weekly bipartisan discussion with Iowa legislators about the key issues facing our state. Brought to you by Mediacom.
Good morning and welcome to another edition of Capitol Preview, sponsored by Mediacom. I'm Bill Peard and I'll be your host this morning on Capitol Preview, where we talk about issues important to Iowans with our state senators and state representatives. Our guest this morning is Senator Matt McCoy, Democrat from Des Moines. Thank you, Senator.
Good morning.
For being here this morning.
Good to be here.
Well, the funnel week is done. The first funnel's done.
Yes.
So the real work begins to keep whittling this down.
That's right.
So tell me a little bit, just briefly, how you thought funnel week went last week. And
Well, I think funnel week went very well. It's obviously the time when the bills that are going to, need to be worked on and need to be kept alive get moved through the process. And so we obviously all have our issues that we're trying to protect during that final week. So
right.
There were several that I wanted to get into the barn, so
Sure.
to speak. And
Sure.
so
Yep.
I felt good that most of my issues survived the funnel.
Excellent. It seems like it's a lot more methodical this year. It seems like things are moving smoother and well going through the funnel.
I noticed there's just a lot less on the agenda this year, and when you talk to leaders, the leaders indicate, that there's very few things that we need to get done before we go have an election. So
Yep.
I think people are focused about getting our work done and getting out
Yep.
and running an election.
Well, speaking of that, Senator, I know you do have a couple issues that you are kind of shepherding through that are important to you up there at the State House, and one of them is school funding. So I'm going to have you just kind of jump in that.
Last year we were all disappointed after the governor vetoed the one-time funding bill for education, which had about $55 million in our K-12 system. So we felt it was very critical to invest in education this year, given last year we starved education. We have really for the last couple of years. And so the Senate Democrats have passed a 4% allowable growth rate, which is the new money that schools will have to pay for costs of increases that they go across all the board from utilities to salaries. Mm-hmm. In addition to that, allowable growth really allows schools that are suffering from either high enrollment or low enrollment to survive out there. So currently the House Republicans have sent us a 2% allowable growth rate, and the governor recommended a 2.45%. So we're getting ready to go into conference, we hope within the next few days, mm-hmm. and we'll start negotiating what this new allowable growth rate should be. I think it should be somewhere between the House and the Senate version, and mm-hmm. I like 3%. Mm-hmm. I think that would be a good compromise. So I think we'll be working to try to reach resolution on that. My hope is that there truly will be compromise by both sides on the issue.
Yep, it's an important issue, and hopefully this year, I think, and this is just my opinion, it just seems a little less political. It seems like people want to kind of get solutions to complicated things this year.
Yeah, I think so, and ultimately we want to provide the predictability to the districts, and so
Absolutely.
We're already over our 30 days, so we need to get
because they're making those budgets now, aren't
That's
they?
right. We need to get that set because they need to send about the end of March. They need to be sending out pink slips for teachers if they can't afford to keep the teachers they have.
Kind of serious stuff.
It is serious stuff.
So how long will those conference committees take to kind of?
Generally, they're days, not weeks, in the legislature, and so my hope is that by the end of next week we should have an allowable growth that we've all settled on.
Speaking of deadlines, Senator, we got another one coming up, and that's the privatization of Medicaid.
Right.
If you want to kind of jump into that a little bit?
Yeah, that's a serious issue because it impacts more than 560,000 Iowans, and the governor unilaterally moved to privatize our Medicaid system, and so ultimately it has a huge impact on our Iowans that depend on Medicaid for their health. and then also the providers that are providing those services. So we're not sure what the federal government will do on that issue. I know that senators that are close to that issue have been working very closely with the federal government and CMS to try to find a resolution to the problem. Ultimately, what the federal government wants to know is, do you have a network of providers that is built out, and have you enrolled all of these Iowans who depend on the system? And so what I'm told is that we're failing on both those marks. And I think it's partially because of the rushed implementation. It was a very short window for implementation, which is why the federal government provided an additional 60-day notice to the state and said, you're not ready to go. And so they'll have to evaluate, is the network built out, and are there enough Iowans enrolled? And so I suspect that will be happening within a day or two. We should hear from CMS on that.
You know, because that's a big task, isn't it, Senator? I mean,
yes.
To do it in the same year that it's proposed?
It's never been done in any of the states that have privatized and gone into the privatization of Medicaid. It's never been done. So it was a very ambitious goal, and you know, the governor and his staff were told that this would be a very difficult thing to achieve, and they went forward with it anyway, and actually built the savings into the budget. So there's
all in.
Yeah, there's $51 million that they expect in savings built into the budget, which now looks in doubt and in jeopardy, and so we'll likely have to do a supplemental appropriation and fund that.
And it's got to work too, right?
Absolutely.
If this thing could be a huge mess for a lot of people, that seniors that rely on this.
Absolutely, and disabled and disabled
right.
children,
right.
And you know, folks that have really severe challenges that need to be addressed, and these are the most vulnerable Iowans. I would put this category of Iowans in the most vulnerable: the disabled, the mentally challenged, physically challenged. These are very sick people, and these are people that need services.
Well, we'll stay tuned. That'll be interesting to see how that turns out. Another issue that seems to be really picking up speed over the last probably 9 months to a year is the water quality, and the governor has a proposal for funding, right, the water.
Yes, and the water quality issue is a huge issue in our state, and I think that the one thing I will say about the Waterworks suit was that it brought a light to the issue, and nitrates in our water system, and how we deal with that, and how urban Iowa and rural Iowa survive together, and how well we play together is all at stake in this argument. I think ultimately what I think the positive about the governor's recommendation is that he for the first time admitted we have a multi-billion-dollar problem, and so when he and Secretary Vilsack rolled out their proposal, they talked about the scope of the problem, that is several $billion over the next 20 years, and so what I think we need to do as a legislature is we need to take some bold steps to address that problem, because clean water and taking care of our environment are important issues for all Iowans.
Absolutely.
It cuts across all political lines. It's a bipartisan issue, and ultimately Iowans have made it very clear they're willing to be taxed to clean up and take care of the water. But the tax shouldn't fall just on urban Iowa. It should also be paid for by rural Iowa. So I think there's probably a combination of proposals out there. Some have talked about actually taxing some of the fertilizer and products that are applied to farms. And then in addition to that, we've talked about some sales tax increases to address specifically water quality and environment.
And I'm sure you agree that these issues, I mean, the intentions were pure when they started using fertilizer and nitrogen 50 years ago to boost our quality of life and our crop production.
Absolutely, and one of the things we were very successful at doing was tiling Iowa farms, and over the last 40 years we've been amazing at vacating water from our farm fields, and so ultimately that has a consequence because you're putting more water into the basins quicker at a very rapid pace, and as a result, that creates a lot of challenges downstream, and one of the challenges are nitrates.
And my understanding is some of those tiling go way back to like 1908. So I mean, these have been around for 100 years or better. Right?
Absolutely. And agriculture is so important to our state, and I don't think we want to establish policies that are hostile to agriculture, but we need to figure out how to do things in a more efficient way, and part of that is buffer strips and green areas, not planting fence row to fence row, and having some setbacks, and ultimately farmers need to know if they do that that they're going to somehow be compensated in a way that protects their economic security.
It's for everybody.
Absolutely.
And for the world.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And we always have been good neighbors as Iowans. We've always been good neighbors. We don't want to send our stuff down the Mississippi and cause more problems south of us either.
Right. I think the dead zone in the Gulf is a prime example of what we don't want to continue. We need to change that. And
so it's good that everybody's talking about it. Everybody seems to want to get this done
together.
That's
right.
So.
And I think next year will be a watershed year for water quality because I think after we get through this election, then folks are going to have time to zero in and focus on that issue, and I think it will be a top issue in the next legislative session.
I think so too. We've got time for our time's kind of wrapping up here, Senator, but we have time for one more that I know this has been kind of near and dear to your heart. You introduced it this year, the Death with Dignity.
Right. Yeah, I think that this is an issue that most Iowans feel strongly about. In fact, we know now more than 7 out of 10 Iowans favor some type of Death with Dignity bill. This is a very sensitive issue, and it was introduced this year by myself and Senator Bolcom and Representative Myers in the House, and it's an effort to, I think, to try to talk about how we deal with end-of-life questions, and particularly how we deal with independence and individuals wanting a say in how their life ends and when their life ends. And so again, these are for people that are diagnosed with an incurable disease with prognosis of less than 6 months, and generally people that are in a painful situation. And it gives them some specific rights, and ultimately provides a foundation or groundwork for them to have those discussions with their families.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Senator.
Well, thank
you.
Great
conversation. Appreciate all your input on what's going on up there at the State House.
Enjoyed our visit.
So thank you again for joining us for another edition of Capitol Preview. Thank you, and join us again. Sorry about that.